Okay, good evening everybody. My name is John Chowler and I'm here today to tell you all about my research. Now that's using microbial fuel cells as water sensors for developing countries. Now I've handed out a couple of name cards to the audience just over there if you want to stick those on your chest and get ready to come on stage in a moment. But first, a little bit of context. So water is a scarce and precious resource, especially so for developing nations. Now, charities such as WaterAid are aiming to provide fresh water to developing countries, but first they need to test this for toxic compounds to see if it's safe to drink. Now, usually to do this, they use a host of sophisticated, time-consuming and expensive chemical and biological tests. Now, what they really need is something that's simple, cheap, and works quick. Now, I believe microbial fuel cells can be the answer to this problem. To see why, we're going to answer a couple of questions today. The first one is, how does a microbial fuel cell work? Second is, how can we use this to detect a toxic compound in water? Now, first question, to see how a microbial fuel cell works, we need to make a microbial fuel cell. Now, to do this, we need two electrodes. Here's one I made earlier, an anode, and then we also have a cathode. These two electrodes facilitate our electrochemical reactions. Now, we join these two together with a bit of electric wire here. This allows electrons to pass between our two electrodes and gives us our electricity. Now, it's usually customary to put a proton exchange membrane in these two as well. So this is our basic fuel cell setup. Two electrodes joined by a wire with a proton exchange membrane in the middle. Now, we need to make this microbial. To do this, we need to introduce our first star of the show, and this is our bacteria. So come on up, quick as you can. If you'd like to read this out to me, at the top of your voice, pretty please.
Hello, I am the bacteria. I am lonely, and I want somewhere to grow, so I am going to cling onto the anode.
Better cling on. Great. So the bacteria makes a little home for himself here at the anode. Now this is our microbial fuel cell. So let's see how this works to produce us some power. To do this, we need to add in some organic substrate to feed the bacteria. Usually we use simple molecules such as acetate or glucose, but today we're going to represent that with some biscuits. Alright, so what we do with our microbial fuel cell, we feed our bacteria our organic substrate. And the bacteria consumes it. You better hold on to this, actually. Great. The bacteria consumes the organic substrate and makes three things. First of all, they make some carbon dioxide. Being a gas just leaves the fuel cell. Second of all, he makes us some protons as well. Now these pass through our fuel cell to the cathode, just here. And lastly, our bacteria makes us some electrons as well. These pass along our electric wire to produce electricity. Yeah. Alright, so here at our cathode, our protons, our electrons combine with some oxygen, which we can get from air around us, to produce a bit of a... Yeah, here we go, you're getting it, excellent. So we make some water, and this is exactly how a microbial fuel cell works. We convert the chemical energy in our organic substrate into electrical energy by utilising the metabolic pathways of our bacteria. Excellent, so that's our first question done. Second question is, how can we use this to detect a toxic compound in water? Now, what's really handy with this setup is that the current we produce in our microbial fuel cell is a direct indicator of the metabolic activity or the happiness of our bacteria. So if we feed our bacteria a nice steady amount of organic substrate, they stay nice and happy, and they produce a nice steady current. Now, let's see what happens when we put a toxic compound in the mix. So, toxic compound is around. And read this out at the top of your voice, pretty please.
I am a toxic compound. I am certainly a most evil character. And I didn't have many friends when growing up, so I like to pick on the bacteria.
So the toxic compound will affect the metabolic activities of the bacteria and stop them digesting the substrate. So if you like to take the biscuits away from our bacterial friends here, excellent! Now we see here that less substrate is broken down, then less electrons are also produced, and then we can quickly detect our toxicant here by looking at that drop in current. So this is exactly how we use a microbial fuel cell to detect toxicants in water. And this is exactly what I'm doing in my research, designing and making these devices to take to developing countries to test for fresh water to make sure it's safe to drink. I'd like to thank you all very much for listening today. It's been great, and give a big round of applause to our toxic compound, our bacteria.